Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we turn to talking about another one of our favorite cartoon comedy shows on television, Fox's own Family Guy. Recently, Family Guy had a pretty relevant and politically influenced episode that came out called The Movement. In it, Peter ends up kneeling for the national anthem, which is just one of a slew of liberal activist positions the show mocked heavily in this episode. This is always a good sign since we all know Family Guy does tend to lean left overall, under the guidance of its starkly liberal creator and lead actor Seth MacFarlane, of course. But every once in a while, an episode like this slips through the cracks, showing not only can Family Guy take a joke and self-deprecate, but also they're still occasionally on point and relevant in promoting the goofing on of left-wingers, which should always be encouraged in my opinion. Back in 2017, for example, we covered the time Family Guy ripped on liberal-led joke policing happening on Twitter, and a year later, and we had great fun talking about the Family Guy episode that mocked millennials. And our video about that episode got us over 1 million views here. Thanks a lot, guys. And then just last year, Family Guy addressed hot topics like President Trump and also the alphabet people in their community. Now back to the present, and today we're officially starting the 2020 coverage of this show by going over the new episode that not only mocks liberal activism, it also has a funny reference to the record-setting Marvel Cinematic Universe movie Black Panther from 2018. We're going to go over this episode's plot, the jokes, and topical references, and more. All that today is coming very soon, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. This The Movement episode's story starts off with Peter Griffin and his family going to a minor league baseball game. Apparently the mother Lois, well, her rich father Mr. Pewterschmidt, he just bought a minor league baseball team in Quahog, the home setting of this show, of course. Once at the game, we get a few jokes about big events like this. First, there's a sign outside the stadium that says it's opening day, but also the bathrooms are already disgusting. Not surprising because it's usually the case when you're going to a big sports game like this. Then after the family parks, Peter goes to immediately start throwing trash out of the back of their car. This is what he considers tailgating. And obviously here the show is making fun of how people go to these sporting events early and then have what they call tailgates where they cook out, drink, and party, and also they tend to leave lots of trash behind willy-nilly. Hence Peter doing so here almost immediately, jokingly skipping over the whole cooking part. After the family checks out their box seats courtesy of Lois's dad, next the team's coach comes out to the field to wave at everyone, but he immediately dies of a heart attack. This results in Mr. Pewterschmidt offering the coaching job of his team to Peter, despite him lacking experience whatsoever. Peter, of course, then gladly accepts, and then the show moves to make more goofs based on this minor league baseball coaching premise. Soon after this is when we get our first political jab too. Here Peter is talking to his players, and in the background we can see the team's mascot is a Native American swinging bloody tomahawks. This doesn't get mentioned or referenced much at all until later in the episode, but it is a very funny and obvious goof on the trend of people complaining about the names of professional sports teams in America which are based on Native American things. There's teams like the Cleveland Indians, the Washington Redskins, the Atlanta Braves, Chicago Blackhawks, Kansas City Chiefs, and so on and so forth. And basically, a lot of sports teams in the United States have picked up on this tradition, which really started before professional sports were even a thing. Americans have been naming our cities, counties, states, rivers, and so on after Native American tribes and their history for generations. And up until recently, this was all good and seen as a sign of respect being done to both honor the modern Native Americans and their current tribes and also acknowledge the historical impact these Indian nations have had on this area for many centuries. But now, of course, with rising levels of liberalism and political correctness in the public, especially in politics, entertainment, and mainstream media, well, now Native American mascots and team names have become offensive and taboo, even though most rational people would say they clearly are not. And this appears to be the influence behind Family Guy making their team in this episode have a Native American mascot as well. Them obviously making theirs a more over-the-top and savage-looking person as a goof on all those PC police people out there freaking out about everything related to this. Next, after a few more minutes and some gags about the horrible food being served at these events, well, then Peter has a big problem with his stomach. He just ate a bucket of lukewarm shrimp at the stadium, followed by a strong cup of burnt coffee and his first cigarette. This causes Coach Peter's stomach to rumble fiercely, but he can't go to the bathroom just yet because the national anthem has almost begun. As the US flag waves and the American anthem plays, Peter struggles to stand with his upset stomach, leading him to shake and cringe and fall down to one knee because he's in so much pain. Then when Peter appears on the Jumbotron kneeling, well, this shocks the whole crowd, who of course think Peter is kneeling for far different reasons, namely to protest the country and all the other implications kneeling like this has in current year. This joke is of course a reference to a real-life famous sports player and no-kneeler named Colin Kaepernick. He's become notorious for the time he started this kneeling at the anthem trend a few years ago, a move he said he was doing to protest the police and their racial discrimination of minorities in our country. This of course is a problem that's greatly exaggerated, or even some might say police brutality is a wholly fabricated issue or an outright lie. Sure, there are random issues from time to time, just like how any job or position of power can have people who get caught doing something wrong, leading to them getting fired, but the truth about police brutality really is, well, blacks and minorities are getting apprehended and sometimes physically handled by police more because they're committing more crimes and resisting arrest more than any other demographic per capita. And if you take out the per capita, then this argument really falls apart because it's actually whites who get taken down by cops the most in this country. And finally, Colin Kaepernick, the originator of this kneeling movement, well, he wasn't really trying to help or be an activist or save the world like how he claimed. In truth, he was a star whose career was fading, and he was using this kneeling bit to get himself more attention, despite people not caring about his football career and skills anymore because he's just not that good. Later, things turn out in Peter's favor when the local news and public start complimenting him for his so-called activism. Peter at first doesn't even know what that means, but then Meg quickly informs him that his national anthem kneeling actually indicated that he's protesting police brutality, effectively making him a social justice warrior, liberal activist, just like Colin Kaepernick. Peter immediately accepts this newfound position, which he never intended, because of course it makes him look far better and more noble than what the truth does. This leads to the dog Brian pretending he's really in support of Peter's newfound activism now. But secretly though, Brian wishes he was the one getting this kind of attention since he's typically the most liberal pro-progressive character on this show. Baby Stewie even tries calling Brian out for this secret seething, but Brian decides to ignore him, and then he makes a stupid joke about Martin Luther King Jr. and then decides to post that on Twitter. After Brian gets a bunch of Twitter notifications immediately, he then says, well, now I have to move out again. This of course is a reference to a previous Family Guy episode, which we also referenced in this video earlier. As I said before, back in 2017, we covered the Family Guy episode dealing with them lampooning the constant joke policing happening on Twitter. Well, that episode saw Brian tweeting some edgy jokes that caused him to become such a social pariah, he ended up having to move out of the house. And now Family Guy aptly references that episode today, probably because it was also related to goofing on silly liberal trends, which is also why we have covered both those episodes here on No Bullshit as well. Next, Peter enjoys his newfound fame, telling the boys at the bar that he was getting patted on the back so much by liberals, his glasses actually fell off. Then we see Peter at a supermarket, annoying customers as they come out, trying to get them to sign his silly pro-liberal petition. And eventually, opportunity literally comes knocking at the Family Guy's door when a big wig from Nike comes over and offers Peter a bunch of money. They want him to be in their new and next ad campaign. And for anyone keeping up with things, I think you know where this one's going. Here, Family Guy is obviously getting ready to goof on all those Nike ads, which they did with Colin Kaepernick. Even after Colin left professional sports, Nike still wanted him as a spokesman anyway, because they of course wanted to get in on the current trend of woke advertising. We've covered these kinds of lame commercials here for years, and specifically, we've broken down the entire Colin Kaepernick Nike commercial thing as well. But to put it briefly here though, Nike made this overly serious, totally pointless black and white promo with Colin Kaepernick, which made no sense and lost the company money and credibility in the process. Woke advertising is cringy as hell, not to mention it never works, so it's no wonder Family Guy is ripping on it now, albeit a little late to the party and a bit late to the punch, some could say. In this Family Guy commercial parody, Peter starts off with his head down as dramatic music plays. Then they go through this faux inspirational bit, and then he talks about having a second and third family, the latter of which is him in a gay relationship across the country. This leads to Peter killing all of his families for some reason, and then he gets arrested and executed publicly while wearing Nike shoes, of course. Things go a little off the rails here at the end, but I think we all get the point. Family Guy is mocking liberal activism, specifically coming from Colin Kaepernick, which is what has led to them mocking these woke commercials like Nike's Get Woke and Go Broke at its finest, and being mocked by some of the best in the game. Later, after Peter falls down and hurts himself, he wakes up in what his friend Cleveland calls Wacohawk. Obviously, this is a joke in Family Guy version of Wakanda from the Black Panther movie and the comics. Peter then immediately notes how cool it looks there at Wacohog, even saying, "Why wasn't this on the Cleveland show?" This is a joke that often comes up on this show too, and it's referring to the now canceled Cleveland spin-off show. Pretty great point actually too. I would have loved to see something like this back then when that Cleveland show was still on, even if the show was on before the actual Black Panther phenomenon. Next, the Wacohog High Council asked Peter to kneel at his next game, despite Peter's boss having already told him not to kneel anymore because the ticket sales for the minor league baseball team are going down. Torn, Peter decides to come up with another solution that just might please everybody at once. In the end, Peter storms the stage at the game and admits he didn't actually kneel to protest. It's because he was sick, as we went over before. Then Peter makes a pretty good argument saying, why do we even have a national anthem at these sporting events anyway? Seems a little serious and dramatic and out of place when you really think about it. And while I wouldn't say we should remove anthems or anything altogether, but this is a pretty good point. And next, Peter plays what he suggests to be the new anthem, which ends up being the Hamster Song, an old internet website and meme that probably predates most people watching this video. It's a cool little song with a dramatic twist and a fine ending to a pretty relevant and interesting political episode of Family Guy. But it is worth pointing out that South Park did this whole replacing the national anthem joke like 3.5 years ago. So to say Family Guy was a little late to the punch is a bit of an understatement. Obviously, most are going to still love and respect South Park more than Family Guy, and their anthem joke was far better and more thought out. South Park's involving J.J. Abrams rebooting the national anthem, which actually was just the original anthem with a new intro slapped on it. But regardless of that, we still do have to give credit to Family Guy for finally stepping up and goofing on and lampooning faux activism like this. And they also goofed on sports kneeling and the overall silliness coming from the left-wing side, which quite frankly was pretty great. What do you guys think? Is Family Guy back in terms of good jokes and political commentary? I know their show is more hit or miss when it comes to making statements and addressing really relevant political issues, but at least this is better than nothing, I guess. Comment your thoughts on everything below, and thanks for watching No Bullshit. Hit that like button to help support this channel, and we'll see y'all next time.